Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the 2025 Women's World Chess Championship Round 5. In the last video, I did a recap of Round 3, and I said that in the next video, I will be doing a recap of Round 4. But Round 4 actually turned out to be a very, boring draw, and nothing special happened. And due to some also time changes, because I have to go to school in the morning and afternoon, so I don't have enough time to make 2 recaps. So I decided that I'm gonna skip Round 4's recap. And basically, it's a game that is not full of anything that thrilling. So if you guys are interested, you can actually go and check Round 4. But today, I am doing a recap of Round 5 of the Women's World Chess Championship. And once again, there is a result being made. And I think in the rest of the recaps of this whole tournament, I will be mainly doing recaps of those games which have a result, no draws, or maybe it's a draw that is really thrilling, full of ups and downs. Other than that, those very boring draws or straightforward draws, I think I might just be skipping to do these recaps. Alright, but today let's now jump into Round 5. In Round 5, Wenjun is with the white pieces and Zhongyi is with the black pieces. Right now, before this game, both sides is 2 out of 4. So both of them had won 1 game and drew 2 games. In this game, Wenjun is with the white pieces, and let's jump right in. So she started with e4 once again, and here we have the Sicilian defense already 3 times in a row. Knight f3 and then e6. In round 1, where Zhongyi is with the white pieces, she also decided to go for this e6, c5, e6 variation. And in round 3, when she is also with the black pieces, she once again decides to go for this opening choice. We have the same reply with d4, takes, and here Zhongyi played a6. So actually, before a6, in round 1, she decides to go for knight f6, and then in round 1, it was something like knight c3 and then knight c6. That game ended in a draw. And in round 3, she played a6, and then there were some sort of c4 ideas played by Wenjun, and in that game, Wenjun won with the white pieces. And now in round 5, once again, Zhongyi, she played this variation, and Wenjun decides to go for something different, and she played bishop d3. So as you can see, in 3 games, Wenjun had 3 different replies, and in the game, Zhongyi decides to go for bishop c5 to develop her bishop. This is the main line. The knight drops back, bishop to a7, and here short castle, knight comes to e7, c4. So white is basically gaining control of the d5 square more, and basically both sides are playing like what they should play like. Knight d6, knight d3, and here knight e5, tickling the bishop, but the bishop here, actually, it's okay for you to retreat the bishop back to e2, or if you don't want to do that, you can do something as played in the game with c5, ignoring this attack of this bishop and pushing the pawn to blockade the diagonal of the a7 bishop. So here we have c5 and then knight 7 g6. Zhongyi is maneuvering her knights to, well, maybe this is a quite uncommon coordination of these 2 knights, especially in the Sicilian defense, but it did happen here. And in the game, Wenjun decides to go bishop e2, keeping the bishop pair on the board, retreating the bishop back. And already we could tell that by the time usage, both sides have already gone out of their home preparation, and right now the opening is completely unfamiliar for both sides. And in the game, Zhongyi went for a quite strange reply, and she decides to go for this b5 move. But this is just turning out to be a mistake. It's actually better for black to go b6. This has the same idea as b5, only the difference is that it is more forcing. And now basically for white takes on b6, and then bishop takes b6. The bishop is once again open to this diagonal and enjoying its life. And also b6, if white rejects taking on b6, then let's say something like bishop e3, but after b takes c5, if white ignores it and plays something like f4, the bishop drops back, and black is doing fine here. White needs to take on c5 at some point, and after takes, at least right now, black had get rid of his own very passive bishop on a7, and then she can just simply play d6 and then castle her king to safety. So this is an idea that is very similar to b5, but b6 is much more accurate than b5. And of course, if white were to take on b6 en passant, then it will change directly back to b6. But there's no point of doing that, and in the game, white can instead go for f4. And here the knight went to c4, which is another mistake. So these kind of, like these two moves, b5 and knight c4, are quite strange. In the game, Zhongyi should have played knight c6, getting back. Even though after knight c6, her position is still quite worse, but at least this is the best option, much better than knight c4. And in the game, why is knight c4 a mistake? Well, because here there's a4. And already black is in trouble. Not only does black has a lot of problem with development, her development is really slow. The bishop is being blocked by the c5 pawn. The knight is somehow a little bit like unsolid on c4 because it only has a pawn defending it, and right now white is trying to get rid of the defending pawn. So the position for black is really hard to play. And in the game, Zhongyi decides to play b4. So if white is attacking black's knight, then black is trying to aim for white's knight. But already at this point, Wenjun, she will be able to be up a pawn after bishop takes, b takes c3, and b takes c3. Taking on c3 is possible, but even more accurate will be to go queen d4 first, going for this g7 pawn. And right now, if you take, then you take back with the bishop. And after f6, there's f5. Black's in huge trouble here. And it's actually much better for white to take back with the queen than taking back with the pawn, because after you take b takes c3, this looks very reasonable and comes to your mind at first. Like, this is the first move that comes to your mind when you take a look at the position. But b takes c3 just damages your own pawn structure, and it is much better to go queen d4 to take back with the queen. But this is just some small details. White is still much better, and in the game, bishop b7 was played. Zhongyi is trying to develop her pieces and create some counterplay in the center of the board. In the game, Wenjun decides to go for queen e2, which is a small inaccuracy. Again, she should have played queen d4. The queen is really active on d4 here. And I'm not sure why Wenjun didn't play it. Maybe she is afraid that the queen and the king are on the same diagonal and somehow the 6 ideas are possible, but actually it is completely safe for white. And here white can just enjoy her attack on the king side with f5, and the position is really bad for black. But in the game, Wenjun decides to go for this more solid approach with queen e2 to defend the e4 pawn, and in the game we have short castle. Bishop d3 back, f5. This is another mistake made by Zhongyi. She should have played queen c7 to attack the c5 pawn. And also, right now, white, for example, defends with bishop e3, but then here's something like rook a b8. Black will at least have some counterplay on the queen side, and white is struggling with this doubled pawn. So maybe black will have some compensation for the lost pawn. But in the game, however, f5 was played, and simply the compensation is no longer enough for black. E takes f5, e takes f5, and right now black also has a really damaged pawn structure. The d7 pawn, the a6 pawn, and the f5 pawn are all really weak pawns. In the game, bishop e3 was played, very logical to defend the c5 pawn, and here queen c7, a mistake. Simply just overlooking that white can take on a6, and another free pawn. Rook e8 was played because if you take on a6 and after queen takes a6, first of all, this bishop can't really have any discovered attacks or anything, because if you take on c5, then there's queen c4 to win the bishop. So basically, black cannot take on a6, or like after taking on a6, black can't do anything. And in the game, rook f8 was played instead, trying to pin the bishop and the queen to create some trouble for white. But in the game, simply bishop takes b7, queen takes b7, and queen c4 check. White successfully ran away from this pin and also giving black a check. King goes into h8, bishop d4, and as you can see, white is up a really healthy pawn, and as you can see, the a7 bishop is blocked inside by the c5 pawn. The position is already winning for white. But Zhongyi is still not giving up, and she decided to play rook e6 first, and after h3, rook e8, doubling the rooks on the e file, but it's not enough. Rook f2 here is played to protect the second rank. Bishop b8 attacking the f4 pawn, rook f1 to defend the f4 pawn, and here knight takes f4. Zhongyi couldn't stand it any longer, because if she kept on waiting like bishop c7, then white will immediately win. For example, after queen b5, all kinds of like threats are coming, and black can't really like protect all of the threats at the same time, or like defend all of the threats at the same time. And in the game, she finally took on f4, but simply after rook takes f4 takes 6, white is up 2 minor pieces for black's rook, and also white is up white is up a pawn here. So the position is really good for white. Rook e1 check, trying to get white's king into some sort of bad situation, but here after rook f1, simply blockading the check. Rook takes, king takes f1, queen e4, threatening this very tricky queen e1 maiden 1, but simply, of course, Wenjun saw that, and she get the king back to g1. Queen b1 check, but king goes up to h2, rook e1, threatening some sort of rook h1, queen e1 checks. But here, after queen d5, h6 was played, and as you can see, white is also threatening to have mate in 1 on the a8 square. And here, if you check on h1, after king g3, queen e1, there's this bishop f2 blockading, and the position is winning for white. But even if black doesn't give that check and play something like h6 to prevent queen a8 mate in 1, it's still not enough. Knight d2 first played, attacking the queen, rook h1, king goes up, check, bishop blocks, queen e2, queen d4. Okay, maybe not the most accurate move. Queen d6 is slightly better, sorry, but it doesn't matter. Queen d4, rook d1, bishop e3, king h7, and here after a5, pushing the pawn. But actually, queen f4 will be winning more in a more smooth way, because you're attacking the f5 pawn, and then pushing the pawn is quite safer. But here after a5, rook e1 was played, and this is something that white needs to worry about a little bit. But after bishop f2, rook d1, bishop e3 goes back, and Wenjun noticed that she can't really play bishop f2 anymore, and here she decides to go for something different. Knight c4 to defend the bishop, and here there are no longer any available checks for black. Rook a1, trying to prevent the pawn from pushing further, but here after knight d6, attacking the pawns, rook a2 threatening queen g2, but here simply the bishop blocks once again to prevent queen g2. Queen e6, Zhongyi is trying her best to at least create some tricks on white's king, but it doesn't really work. King g6, the king goes back to safety, and here after a few maneuvers, no mistakes made by both sides, especially Wenjun. She is playing extremely well, even though she's now sacrificed her a6 pawn, but in return, she takes the f4 pawn. And after rook a2, queen goes back to defend the g2 pawn. And then after a couple of more moves, white is now having this big pass pawn on c6, and it's quite unstoppable. Knight d5, rook c8, and after queen d3, king g8, this final beautiful blow by Wenjun, which is knight e7, a brilliant move. And simply if black takes on e7 here, there is queen g6 check, and if you go king f8 here, white will be able to fork the king and the rook to win the rook and win the game as well. So here after knight e7, Zhongyi simply resigned the game. Actually, she had been in a losing situation already in the 20th move already at this point where she is down a pawn. So the position is really bad for her already, and her opening choices are quite weird. b5 and then knight c4 are two mistakes that I think she shouldn't have made. But it's actually quite a nice win by Wenjun, and right now she is in a 1-point lead. But of course, there are still a couple of more games that will be played. The tournament is still not even reaching its half point. And I mean, Zhongyi still has a couple of games, she still has a lot of time to win this point back. So anything can happen. And hope you guys enjoyed this game. And probably my own prediction in the next game where Zhongyi will when Zhongyi will be playing with the black pieces once again, she might choose a different opening because her result with the Sicilian defense is not that good, as we can see. So this is my expectation, and let's try to predict what will happen. And definitely the further the tournament goes deeper, the games will become more thrilling. Alright, but now hope you guys enjoyed this game as well as this video, and thank you for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!